In the medieval kingdom of Heim, every noble household kept one thing hidden: an informant paid by the crown. These informants pretended to be loyal servants, quiet maids, or harmless helpers, but their real task was far more sinister: listen, observe, and report every word spoken by women. For Lady Rosalind, betrayal didn't come from an enemy, it came from her own chambermaid. When Rosalind had spoken one harmless sentence, whispered during a cold winter night, the king grows careless. It was not rebellion, not treason, just frustration. But in a world where a woman's opinion meant danger, those 4 words became deadly. Elwyn, desperate to escape punishment for stealing candles, traded Rosalind's secret to the palace guards in exchange for her freedom. The next morning, Rosalind awoke to armored footsteps echoing through her corridor. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She only asked one question: who betrayed me?
Elwyn could not even look at her.
Rosalind was taken to the interrogation chamber beneath the castle, a stone room with only one chair, one torch, and the echo of dripping water. She insisted she meant no rebellion, but in medieval courts, a woman's truth was the weakest weapon. A single false report outweighed her entire life of loyalty. By evening, her fate was sealed. She was not executed, but stripped of her lands and sent into exile, her name erased from court records. Elwyn, the woman she trusted, received a small purse of silver. And in that moment, every woman in Hymir learned a cruel truth. In the medieval world, betrayal didn't come from enemies, it came from those who served your wine. In the kingdom of Verendel, noblemen fought wars with swords, but the battle they feared most happened inside their own homes. A wife's loyalty wasn't just emotional, it determined land inheritance, legitimacy of heirs, and even political alliances. A single whisper that a woman had grown too close to someone else could shatter entire dynasties. Lady Helene lived under this shadow every day. Her husband, Lord Garrick, returned from war scarred and paranoid, convinced enemies lurked in every corridor. But the enemy he feared most was the silence between his wife's words. Each time a servant spoke to her too softly, he noticed. Each time she paused before answering a question, he wondered. Helene walked through her castle like a ghost, careful with every step, measured with every breath. She avoided eye contact with men, never spoke to servants unless necessary, and kept her face calm, even when terrified. She knew one accusation, just one, could send her to the punishment pits, where women were interrogated without mercy. The tragedy began when Lord Garrick overheard 2 guards gossiping about her beauty. They meant no harm, but in Garrick's mind, admiration equaled danger. That night, he demanded, Helene confess her secret. There was nothing to confess, but innocence was irrelevant. Fear had already poisoned him. He confined her to the northern tower, allowing her only 1 meal a day, not because she had betrayed him, but because he believed she might one day. And so, medieval women learned a cruel reality. Men feared loyalty, not because women broke it, but because the thought of losing control terrified them more than any battlefield. In medieval courts, women's lives weren't judged by truth, they were judged by whispers. Invisible networks of gossip, jealousy, and secret alliances moved faster than any royal messenger. One word could destroy a life long before evidence even appeared. Lady Adira was a model of grace, wise, and loyal to the crown. Yet, for all her devotion, she lived under the rule of whispers. The queen's ladies-in-waiting disliked her calm confidence, so they began with a small rumor. Adira is too close to the royal advisor. There was no proof, no meeting, no secret letters. But in the medieval world, rumors didn't need proof, they created it. Within a week, half the court believed she had betrayed her vows. Servants hid their eyes.
Friends avoided her, and even her husband grew cold and suspicious.
Adira confronted the women who spread the lies, but they denied everything with sweet smiles. Then came the final blow, an anonymous note placed on the king's table claiming Adira plotted to influence royal decisions. No signature, no evidence, just ink on parchment. But it was enough. She was summoned for questioning. her voice trembling as she defended herself. The inquiry panel, 3 men who barely knew her had already made their decision.
Whisper networks had spoken. And in medieval courts, gossip was the loudest judge.
Adira wasn't executed, but she was sent to a remote convent, her name stained forever. Her fall became a lesson all noble women understood. In the Middle Ages, it wasn't betrayal that ruined women. It was the whisper of betrayal. Rumors in medieval courts were like poison, slow, silent, and impossible to trace. A single lie had the power to erase a woman's rights, destroy her marriage, or end her life entirely. Lady Clarice learned this the day her cousin, jealous of her rising influence, created a rumor designed to kill. Clarice had recently been honored by the king for her wise counsel, and many nobles envied her position. Her cousin, Lady Morel, whispered 3 deadly words into the ear of the queen. Clarice seeks power. In a world where women were expected to obey, not advise, those words became a death sentence. Suddenly, Clarice noticed everything changing around her. Guards who once bowed now glared. Maids avoided her door. Even her husband looked at her with uncertainty. She asked Morel what had happened, but Morel hid her malice with a gentle smile. Soon after, Clarice was summoned by the High Council. She entered the chamber alone while 5 noblemen judged her with suspicion in their eyes. They asked whether she had ambitions beyond her station. She denied it truthfully. But denial meant nothing once a rumor took hold. The council accused her of manipulating the king. Clarice begged for a fair investigation, but the medieval justice system cared more about protecting power than protecting women. By nightfall, she was sentenced to imprisonment in the cold eastern dungeon,
Where the stone walls held the screams of countless women who had fallen to lies before her.
Clarice's story became a warning, whispered among noble women. A rumor could be a woman's executioner long before the axe ever touched her neck. In medieval estates, the greatest danger wasn't invading armies, it was the people hired to sweep the floors, light the candles, and pour the water. Servants were everywhere, silent and invisible. Yet they carried the power to unmake entire families. Lady Eveline knew this too well. Her castle employed more than 100 servants, each connected by a web of loyalties she could never control. Some served her husband, others served rival nobles. Many secretly served the crown, and some served themselves. Every word Eveline spoke was measured, every glance deliberate. She never vented, never cried, never expressed doubt, not because she lacked emotion, but because she feared the ears listening behind wooden screens and thin stone walls. Her downfall began when a royal spy disguised as a stable boy overheard her private conversation with her sister. She had said only, "I wish we lived far from the court's corruption." It was harmless, a dream shared by many. But the spy twisted her words into treason.
Lady.
Eveline desires to abandon her duty and influence her husband to withdraw support from the crown. The royal court reacted swiftly. Eveline was summoned at dawn, escorted by guards who refused to meet her eyes. She defended herself with unwavering grace. But how could truth defeat a spy's report backed by the crown? She wasn't executed. Her husband, status, spared her, but she was confined to her chambers for life, forbidden from attending feasts, councils, or even the gardens she loved. Every woman who heard her fate learned the same terrifying truth. In medieval households, spies didn't need weapons. They only needed your words. Queen Adrielle ruled a kingdom where loyalty was currency and betrayal was death, but she had learned the price of trust the hard way. As a young princess, she overheard 2 servants whispering lies about her, character rumors that nearly cost her the throne. Since then, she lived in a world where every murmur sounded like a threat, every soft voice a dagger aimed at her back. By the time she became queen, she trusted no one, not ladies-in-waiting, not advisors, not even her handmaids who brushed her hair each morning. She ordered the guards to listen closely to the servants' quarters and report any suspicious whispers. A single wrong sentence could lead to immediate punishment. The fear among servants grew so intense that many refused to speak at all. They walked the palace halls like shadows, terrified of letting a stray word slip from their lips. One winter evening, the queen heard laughter from the laundry chamber.
It was innocent laughter, two young girls joking about the cold butt in the queen's paranoid mind. Laughter meant mockery.
She stormed into the chamber, her guards behind her, demanding to know what they had said. The girls trembled, insisting they were laughing at the freezing water and nothing more. But Adriel's suspicion had already rooted itself. She sentenced them to exile that very night. Within weeks, the entire palace lived in suffocating silence. Even noblewomen avoided speaking, unless absolutely necessary. Hidden terror became the palace's real ruler, and the queen, surrounded by silence, discovered a lonely truth. The more fear she created, the more she feared everyone around her. In the village of Thornwell, betrayal wasn't just a possibility, it was a nightly companion.
Women lived with the knowledge that the people closest to them, neighbors, servants, even relatives, could destroy them for the smallest mistake.
Elara, a humble merchant's wife, experienced this terror more intimately than most. Her husband, Bram, had risen in influence due to his successful trade routes, and with influence came enemies. Instead of attacking Bram directly, they targeted the most vulnerable point in his life, Elara. One night, as she lay beside her sleeping husband, she heard faint whispers outside her door. Two villagers were discussing her, not realizing she was awake. If we say she insulted the Baron, they'll punish her. Bram's reputation will crumble. Her breath caught in her throat. A single accusation reel or invented could lead to interrogation, imprisonment, or public humiliation. She knew she had to act, but action itself could be seen as guilt. At dawn, she pretended she had heard nothing, carrying water, lighting the hearth, and preparing bread as usual. Yet every sound felt sharper, every shadow more dangerous. She avoided speaking with neighbors and refused to attend gatherings, afraid someone might twist her words. The betrayal eventually came not from strangers, but from a jealous cousin who envied Elara's peaceful marriage. With a single fabricated claim that Elara had been exchanging secret messages with a traveling knight, the cousin set a deadly chain in motion. Within hours, guards surrounded her home, and as Elara was dragged to the manor for questioning, she realized the darkest truth of medieval life. A woman didn't need to do wrong, she only needed someone willing to accuse her. Lady Seraphine was known for her kindness, a rare trait among medieval nobility. She treated her maids with warmth, shared her leftover bread, and even helped one of them learn to read. But kindness offered no protection in a world built on fear and ambition. Her most trusted maid, Lyra, had grown close to her over the years. Seraphine confided in Lyra the way she would in a younger sister, sharing dreams, frustrations, and worries. One night, overwhelmed with stress, Seraphine admitted something harmless but dangerous. If the king keeps raising taxes, the people will starve. These words were not rebellion, they were compassion. But Lyra had debts. Her brother had been imprisoned, and the guards promised his release if she brought them something valuable. Seraphine's words became that currency. The next morning, Lyra handed a written confession to the captain of the guard, claiming Seraphine questioned the king's leadership. That single accusation was enough to spark a scandal. Rumors spread across the court like wildfire. Seraphine speaks against the king. She doubts his judgment. She seeks influence. Summoned to the throne room, Seraphine found herself surrounded by nobles who once praised her. She tried to explain, but Lyra's testimony, twisted and exaggerated, carried more weight. Though Seraphine escaped execution, she was demoted, stripped of her privileges, and assigned to live in a remote estate, far from court. Months later, Lyra's brother was released, but Lyra herself was dismissed and left to wander the streets. The court had no further need of her, and women whispered a warning for years after. It's not the enemies you fear most, it's the ones who know your secrets in the Dark Ages. Rivalry wasn't petty, it was lethal. Nobles fought for status, and when two women competed for influence, the battlefield wasn't swords, it was lies.
Lady Thalia entered court as a newcomer, young and radiant, capturing the court's attention.
Her grace made the older noblewomen uneasy, especially Lady Morgana, who had spent years trying to gain the king's favor.
Seeing Thalia admired, Terrified, her envy quickly transformed into vengeance.
Morgana crafted a plan crueler than any blade. She invited Thalia for tea, spoke sweetly, praised her charm, and memorized every innocent word she spoke. That night, Morgana twisted those words into a dangerous accusation. Thalia questions the queen's strength. The court seized upon the rumor, hungry for drama. Whisper after whisper built a storm. Servants repeated it. Courtiers exaggerated it. Even the queen grew suspicious. Thalia, confused and frightened, noticed the sudden coldness around her. People avoided her gaze. Hushed conversations stopped when she entered rooms, and invitations to feasts disappeared. Finally, she was summoned to the royal council, her heart pounding.
Morgana stood in the shadows, watching victory unfold.
Thalia defended herself with trembling voice, insisting she had said nothing treasonous.
But the rumor had already become truth. The council declared her socially unfit to remain in court, a polite phrase masking exile. As she rode away in tears, Morgana returned to her seat, victorious but empty. Her envy had won the battle. But she had destroyed an innocent woman's life to do it. And so, medieval women learned a brutal rule. Jealousy didn't just hurt feelings, it destroyed futures. Lady Isolde belonged to one of the oldest noble families in the realm.
Her bloodline stretched back centuries, and with it came immense responsibility and immense danger.
Her rivals wanted her lands, her influence, and her future heirs gone. They didn't attack with swords. They attacked with silence. It began when a servant claimed Isolde had been meeting in secret with a scholar. The scholar was her cousin, but the lie spread too fast for truth to catch up. One by one, her allies withdrew their support. Friends avoided her. Even her sister stopped visiting, afraid of being tainted by association. Then came the council's ultimatum. Her marriage contract would be cancelled unless she proved her loyalty. In medieval law, a woman's future depended entirely on her marriage. If she lost it, she lost her chance to produce heirs, and her family line would end. Isolde begged for a fair trial, but instead, the council demanded she take a loyalty oath, known as the rite of purity, a ritual designed to humiliate women. Refusal meant guilt. Acceptance meant lifelong shame. She agreed, hoping to save her family's legacy. But the ritual required public confession, even for crimes she did not commit. Her silence was twisted into admission, her tears into evidence. The council annulled her marriage anyway. Her fiancé was ordered to wed another woman, one favored by the nobles who orchestrated the betrayal. Isolde's inheritance was seized, her lands divided, her future erased, and the bloodline that had endured wars, famine, and centuries of history ended because of a lie. In medieval times, betrayal wasn't loud, it was silent, calculated, and final. Deep beneath the stone floors of Stormwatch Castle existed a room almost no one knew about, the confession chamber. It was said to be a place where women were taken not to confess their own sins, but to expose the sins of others. If they refused, punishment awaited. If they obeyed, someone else suffered. Lady Eleanor was dragged there one cold autumn night after being accused of withholding information. She had done nothing wrongly, failed to report a conversation she overheard between two noble women. Yet in medieval courts, silence was treated as treason. A hooded priest led her into the chamber lit by a single candle. Shadows danced on the walls, distorting her trembling figure. She was forced to sit on a stone bench, wrists bound with coarse rope. The priest demanded, "Name the women who speak ill of the crown." Eleanor protested. She knew none. But the priest insisted that every woman knew something, and if she remained silent, it was proof she was protecting traitors. The fear of punishment, lashes, exile, or worse pressed against her like a tightening noose. Her heart throbbed painfully. Should she protect others at the cost of her life? Or betray innocent people to save herself? Eleanor refused to speak. For that, she was sentenced to a week of confinement without food, followed by public humiliation. When she finally emerged, weak and trembling, she could barely stand. But she had kept her integrity. Yet the message was clear for every woman who heard her story. In a world built on fear, silence itself was treated as betrayal. In the village of Blackmere, mothers passed down lessons, not through books, but through warnings carved into their daughters' minds. The most important was always the same. Trust no one, not even those who smile at you. Young Mara learned this lesson earlier than most. At 16, she was admired for her beauty and envied for her intelligence. Her mother saw danger in both. She warned Mara that envy turned friends into predators, and admiration turned men into enemies. But Mara believed kindness could win anyone's heart. She shared secrets with other girls, her age harmless things about dreams, fears, and love. She thought friendship meant safety.
She couldn't have been more wrong.
One day, a jealous girl named Irena spread a lie that Mara had insulted the manor lord's nephew. It was small, but in a medieval world where honor meant everything, even small lies could result in severe consequences. Guards arrived at Mara's home, demanding she explain why she had dared to mock a nobleman. She pleaded innocence, but the village council believed Irena's words. After all, Mara was young, confident, and talented, qualities seen as threatening. Her mother stepped forward, begging for mercy. Mara was spared harsh punishment, but the shame attached to her name stuck like tar. No marriage proposals came. No friends remained.
Even neighbors avoided looking her way.
And that's when Mara finally understood her mother's warning. In a world built on social suspicion and fragile reputations, trust was the most dangerous gift a woman could give. Lady Rowena received a sealed letter one winter morning, delivered by a trembling messenger who bowed too quickly and refused eye contact. The letter was addressed in elegant handwriting, bearing the Queen's crest. Immediately, dread settled into Rowena's chest. Letters from royalty rarely carried good news for women. She broke the seal with shaking fingers, but before she could read, her husband stormed into the room, snatched the letter from her hand, and accused her of secret correspondence. Rowena protested. She hadn't written anything, hadn't summoned the letter, hadn't even known it existed. But medieval men feared nothing more than the idea of a woman thinking or acting independently. The accusation spread faster than truth. Servants whispered that she had plotted with the Queen. Others said she had tried to influence political decisions. Her husband, paranoid and prideful, ordered guards to watch her every move. When Rowena finally managed to read the letter, she discovered it was merely an invitation to assist with a winter charity event, nothing dangerous, nothing political. But the damage was done. Her husband refused to believe her. He claimed the Queen was covering for her. His pride couldn't accept that he had accused his wife wrongly, so he doubled down. Rowena was placed under household arrest, forbidden from attending gatherings, and eventually sent to a distant cousin's estate for her own safety. And so, a harmless letter one she never requested, never responded to, and barely redestroyed her place in society. In medieval times, truth arrived too late to save women from lies. Lord Carsten had always been an unpredictable man, but after returning wounded from a border war, something inside him broke. He became paranoid, convinced that enemies hid within his home. But his greatest suspicion fell on his wife, Lady Marin. One
evening,
he overheard a servant mention Marina's kindness toward a traveling musician who had passed through the village. It was nothing more than generosity. She had given the man water. Yet Carsten twisted it into betrayal. He confronted her with wild eyes, demanding she confess her affair. Marin tried to reason with him, to calm his fraying mind, but fear had already devoured his logic. He summoned a council of local nobles to judge her. These men owed him favors, and none dared question his accusations. Marin stood alone in the center of the cold stone hall, surrounded by pointed fingers and merciless eyes. Despite her pleas, the council declared her guilty of emotional betrayal, a crime invented purely to satisfy Carsten's paranoia. Her punishment was exile to the northern marshlands, a place where disease and bandits thrived. It was, effectively, a death sentence. The night before she was sent away, Marin wrote a final letter to her sister, warning her to stay vigilant. We women do not fall by our own sins.
but by the fears of the men who claimed to protect us. Marin never returned from the marshlands,
and her story became a whispered reminder across noble courts. A woman didn't have to betray her husband. His imagination could do it for her. In King Aldrich's castle, distrust reached its peak during a tense winter when rumors of rebellion swept the kingdom. Paranoid and hungry for control, the king issued a new decree. All servants were to report every word spoken by noblewoman O, matter how small. The castle transformed overnight. Servants who once laughed softly in the halls now walked with stiff backs and careful eyes. They feared failing to report something. Noblewomen feared speaking at all. Lady Vivian, known for her gentle spirit, felt the walls closing in. Every morning, she woke wondering which servant might be listening through the door. Her handmaid Alira, once her closest companion, now began to avoid eye contact, her loyalty torn between duty and friendship. One evening, Vivian whispered to Alira, "This decree will destroy us." It was a harmless truth, but Alira's heart hammered if she stayed silent. She risked punishment. If she reported it, she betrayed the woman who had raised her like a sister. Fear won. Alira reported it. The next day, Vivian was summoned for questioning.
Though she meant no rebellion, her words were interpreted as criticism of the king's rule and offense punishable by imprisonment.
She defended herself with grace, but the council cared more about obedience than fairness. Vivian was placed under restricted movement. Forbidden to speak to anyone except guards and Alira, was rewarded with a silver coin she could not bear to touch. The castle descended into suffocating silence, and women learned a fatal truth. When survival demands betrayal, no bond, even love, can be trusted.
Lady Avellini lived in the ancient manor of Greywood, a place famous for its cold corridors and echoing halls.
But the true terror of the manor lay in her bedroom, a chamber where shadows moved even when the candles were still. Servants whispered that the room was cursed, but Avellini feared something worse than ghosts: betrayal. For months, she sensed she was being watched. Not by spirit, but by people. Her husband's political rivals wanted her gone, and she knew spies lurked somewhere inside the manor walls. Each night, as she lay down to sleep, she heard faint clicking sounds like someone writing or recording her words. Shadows near the wardrobe shifted unnaturally, stretching and shrinking without light. Aveline tried to convince herself it was her imagination, but the unease never left her. One night, she spoke aloud. "If someone is here, show yourself." The shadows froze. A moment later, a panel in the wall creaked softly, then silence. Terrified, Aveline ordered her maid to sleep in the chamber with her.
At dawn, she awoke to find the maid gone. Vanished. No explanation.
Guards searched, but the girl had disappeared without a trace. Days later, Aveline discovered the truth. A secret tunnel behind her bedroom wall, used by spies who reported every word she said. Her maid had discovered a tent was removed to keep the secret safe. The shadows hadn't been ghosts. They were men. And Aveline realized that in her world, betrayal didn't lurk in darkness, it hid in plain sight. In the kingdom of Rivenshire, a magnificent oak bed stood at the center of a scandal stretching generations. Crafted for Queen Viridia centuries ago, it was adorned with carvings of roses, vines, and angels. But it carried a cursor, so people believed. Every noble woman who slept in it died mysteriously within weeks.
But the truth was far more sinister.
Lady Acella inherited the bed after her cousin's sudden death. Everyone warned her not to use it, but she had no choice. It symbolized status, and refusing it would look like defiance to the court. The night she slept in it, she felt a strange pressure beneath her back, as if something was hidden inside the wood. Days later, she overheard servants whispering that influential families were waiting for her turn, as though her death were already scheduled. Determined to uncover the truth, Acela dismantled part of the bed's frame. What she found chilled her to the bone. A secret opening where poisonous herbs could be inserted, releasing slow toxins while the sleeper rested. The bed wasn't cursed. It was a weapon, used for centuries by rival families to eliminate women quietly. Before Estella could reveal the truth, her political enemies acted. One evening, her goblet was replaced with poisoned wine. She died without ever exposing the bed's dark purpose. The bed was passed on again. Another woman slept in it.
Another mysterious death followed.
And so the legend continued, not of a curse, but of a tradition of betrayal wrapped in polished oak. In medieval courts, even a bed could become a silent executioner. Inside the royal palace of Eldermont, the queen's chamber held a bed surrounded by stories of curses and haunt. But the bed's true danger came not from spirits but from spies. Queen Leora, young and newly crowned, noticed strange things happening at night. The bed curtains swayed despite closed windows. The candle flames trembled without breeze, and the shadows cast on the walls didn't match the furniture. One night, unable to sleep, she pressed her back against the carved headboard and felt a vibration, like footsteps behind the wall. The next morning, she ordered the royal carpenter to inspect the chamber. But before he arrived, a rumor spread through the palace. The queen speaks too freely at night. That meant someone was listening. Her closest lady-in-waiting, Risa, urged her to be cautious. But Leora soon discovered Risa had been secretly reporting her words to political rivals.
There were hidden tunnels behind the chamber where spies listened to everything.
Leora confronted Risa, trembling not with fear, but heartbreak. Risa confessed she had been threatened either betray the queen or face execution for fabricated charges. Days later, guards stormed Leora's room, claiming she plotted against noble families. It was all based on twisted accounts of private conversations stolen through the walls. Leora was nearly dethroned, saved only by a loyal knight who exposed the tunnels. The bed was dismantled, the tunnels sealed. Risa vanished. No one knew if she fled or was silenced. And Leora learned the cruelest truth of queenship. A crown protects no woman from betrayal. It only attracts more. In the court of King Thander, gossip spread faster than plague. Noblewomen learned quickly that one careless whisper could turn into a fatal accusation. But no one suffered from this more than Lady Danessa, a quiet, intelligent woman. Danessa preferred books to banquets. Her silence, however, made her a target. People filled her silence with stories they invented, jealous tales meant to entertain bored nobles. One day, a drunken lord joked that Danessa knew too much about the treasury. He meant nothing by it. But within hours, the rumor morphed into Danessa steals royal funds. By the next day, it became Danessa plans to bankrupt the kingdom. Danessa had never even set foot in the treasury. When summoned to court, she tried to defend herself, but the nobles cared more about drama than truth. They whispered about her calm demeanor, claiming it was proof she was hiding something. The queen, influenced by her lady's poisonous gossip, ordered Danessa placed under watch. Guards followed her everywhere, turning her daily life into a nightmare. In desperation, Danessa wrote letters to friends explaining the truth, but they refused to be associated with her. Being near a suspect meant risking your own safety. Eventually, the king declared her a social threat and banished Herbist entirely on stories made by bored aristocrats. Her house was seized, her possessions redistributed, and her name became a lesson for every woman at court. It wasn't truth that controlled a woman's fate. It was the mouths of those who envied her. In the kingdom of Valterine, a woman's loyalty was measured not by truth or justice but by the whims of men who judged her. Entire laws existed to punish women for imagined disobedience, fabricated disrespect, or simply being too confident. Lady Merelda lived in constant fear of these punishments. She had seen her aunt exiled for disagreeing too boldly with a councilman. She had watched her friend punished for meeting her brother without a male escort, and she had witnessed a noblewoman whipped for refusing a dance. When Merelda married Lord Renwick, she prayed life would soften. But Renwick was proud, insecure, and deeply obsessed with controlling her. He watched her every move, interpreting her silence as defiance, her sighs as criticism, and her friendships as threats. One evening, she gently suggested he listen more during council meetings. Renwick froze. In his mind, she had challenged his authority. The next morning, she received a formal document accusing her of intellectual disloyalty a false charge created to shame noblewomen. Her punishment: confinement, loss of personal property, and removal from all social gatherings. Merelda tried to appeal, but the court favored Renwick. To them, a husband's honor outweighed a woman's voice. She was locked in the West Tower for weeks, allowed only bread and water. Her hair grayed early, her spirit faded, her laughter disappeared. Even after she was released, the stain of disloyalty followed her everywhere. No one dared speak to her. Medieval women understood after seeing her fate. You didn't need to betray a man to be punished. You only had to think differently. Queen Marianne always believed the royal bedchamber was the safest place in the palace her sanctuary. But safety was an illusion in a world where power rested on whispers and betrayal was a silent weapon. For months, she felt she was being watched. Every time she spoke to her ladies-in-waiting, rumors somehow reached the council before dawn. She dismissed it as coincidence until one night, while adjusting her pillow, her fingers brushed against a crack in the wooden headboard. Curious, she pressed her hand deeper and froze. Inside the headboard was a tiny hole carved through the wood, perfectly sized for an eye to watch through. The realization hit her like ice. Someone had been spying on her every night. She ordered her guards to search the adjoining chamber. They discovered a hidden crawlspace connecting her bedroom to a small room behind it, and inside that room sat a trembling young maid named Fira, someone the queen had trusted, someone she had fed, clothed, and protected. Fira confessed she had been forced into spying by a noble faction seeking to expose the queen's private concerns. They pressured her, threatening to imprison her family if she refused. So every night, she listened through the hole, memorizing every word the queen whispered. Her fears, doubts, even personal grief. The betrayal shattered Marianne. She didn't punish Firas, punish the nobles who threatened her, but the damage was done. The queen could never sleep peacefully again. From that day forward, she understood the true curse of royalty. Power didn't isolate Ubetr. In medieval families, sisters were raised together.
Fed from the same kitchen, taught the same lessons yet, often turned into each other's greatest threats.
Lady Risa and her younger sister, Elaine, were no exception. Their father's vast estate was set to be inherited by only one daughter, and every woman in the county knew that envy over inheritance destroyed more families than war. Risa loved Elaine deeply, but she noticed a strange shift. Elaine had grown distant, whispering with servants, watching her with unreadable eyes. One evening, during a feast, Risa overheard two noble women talking. They spoke of a rumor one accusing Risa of planning to steal the family estate by forging documents. She was stunned. She had never touched legal papers in her life, but the rumor had a detail only her sister knew. Her blood ran cold. She confronted Elaine privately, hoping it was a misunderstanding. Tears welled in Elaine's eyes as she admitted everything. She had been manipulated by a local baron who promised her marriage and protection if she helped remove her sister from inheritance. Elaine had repeated a few innocent things Risa once said, and the baron twisted them into crime. But Elaine begged forgiveness only after the damage was irreversible. The council demanded Risa prove her innocence. Her father was aging and easily influenced. The baron made sure evidence was planted. In the end, Risa's claim to the estate was revoked, and she was sent to live in a distant convent. Her sister inherited everything, and medieval women whispered the same lesson for generations. Enemies were dangerous, but a jealous sister could destroy you completely. At King Arvin's glittering court, gossip was an entertainment, was a weapon. The nobles sharpened lies the way soldiers sharpen swords, and the women who suffered most were those too gentle to fight back. Lady Celestine was one of them. She was soft-spoken, graceful, and deeply admired by the common people. Her kindness irritated the jealous noblewomen who believed influence belonged only to the cruel and ambitious. So, they devised a simple plan. Tarnish Celestine's reputation with a rumor. It began with a whispered claim that she visited the gardens too often. Then, someone added she met someone there. By the next day, the story transformed into Celestine meets a secret lover in the gardens at night. There was no lover. She had been visiting the gardens to leave bread for starving birds. But truth didn't matter.
Noblemen began avoiding her.
Women who once smiled now glared. The queen demanded to question her privately, convinced Celestine had dishonored the court. Celestine explained the truth, but the queen saw her gentle behavior as suspicious. Why defend herself with calmness if she were innocent? Soon, Celestine was accused of moral corruption and stripped of her court privileges. She was forbidden to attend gatherings, ceremonies, or even speak to young noblewomen out of fear she would influence them. Her reputation crumbled under the weight of lies, and though the rumor eventually faded, the stain remained. Celestine lived quietly, forever marked by sins she never committed. Her story echoed across the kingdom. In the medieval world, gossip wasn't just cruel, it was a death sentence without blood.
Long before written history,
The court of King Alden was known for welcoming women into its council chambers, something rare in medieval kingdoms. Women brought wisdom, strategy, and compassion. But all of this changed because of one betrayal that rewrote their fate for generations. Lady Corin was the king's most trusted advisor, respected for her intelligence and unmatched political instinct, but her power made her a target.
Noblemen who envied her influence secretly plotted her downfall.
They found their weapon in a desperate servant named Hisa, who had been caught stealing. They promised Hisa freedom in exchange for a lie. Hesa claimed Corin had been secretly meeting with foreign envoys at night, negotiating alliances behind the king's back. The nobles crafted forged letters, staged secret meetings, and built an entire illusion of treason. The evidence was false. The accusations deadly. When confronted, Corin defended herself with unwavering truth. But the king, wounded by the idea of disloyalty, refused to believe her. In the medieval world, even a shadow of doubt was enough to destroy a woman. Corin was imprisoned and later exiled. But the damage was much larger than her personal loss. Humiliated and paranoid, King Alden issued a new decree. No woman shall hold council position again. With that one law, centuries of female leadership vanished. Women were pushed out of politics entirely, not because they were weak, but because powerful men feared them. And all because one desperate servant told a lie. The kingdom learned a grim truth.
betrayal doesn't just destroy a woman, it destroys every woman who comes after her.
In the Duchy of Blackthorn, a terrifying practice existed beneath the surface of political elegance. Secret trials held against women without their presence, consent, or even awareness. Accusations were made, rumors gathered. Decisions passed all behind closed doors. Lady Saren was one such victim. She was a healer, beloved by townsfolk for her remedies and gentle nature. But her influence worried the Duchess, who feared Saren's popularity could overshadow her own. So the Duchess fabricated a subtle accusation. Saren had failed to show proper respect during a feast.
A small offense, but in the wrong hands, it became catastrophic.
That night,
A secret tribunal
Convened.
3 noblemen and 2 court women whispered in a chamber lit only by torches. They reviewed rumors, invented connections, and used Saren's independence as proof of disobedience.
Saren knew none of this.
The next morning, she awoke 2 soldiers at her door. They claimed she had been judged socially unfit and must leave the duchy by sunset. She protested, begged to know her crime. But the guards only said, "The decision has been made." Her friends were too afraid to help her. Anyone who defended an unfit woman risked becoming unfit themselves. Saren left quietly, with nothing but her herbs and courage. She never learned the details of the trial, nor that the Duchess had orchestrated the entire thing. Years later, women still whispered about her story, terrified. If trials could happen without their knowledge, how could they ever defend themselves? In the fortified city of Hereford, noblewomen were taught from childhood that silence was their only shield. Words were dangerous, too soft, too bold, too honest, too clever. Any of them could be twisted into accusations.
Lady Selene learned this truth the night she attended her first royal banquet.
She made a harmless remark about the king's aging warhorse, merely noting its limping gait. But her comment, overheard by a jealous baroness, spread through the hall like poison. By morning, the rumor had changed completely. Selene mocks the king. She questions his strength. She speaks like a traitor. Selene was horrified. She begged to speak with the queen to clear her name.
But her friends warned her. Explaining herself might worsen her situation.
The king disliked women who defended themselves too strongly. Defending yourself meant you had something to hide. So Selene stayed silent. Her silence was interpreted as guilt. The council arranged an inquiry without her. She wasn't allowed to attend. Only informed after that she was being placed under supervision until her behavior improved. Her movements were restricted, her attendance replaced with spies, and every word she spoke was monitored. She had done nothing wrong, yet she learned what every medieval woman eventually understood. Truth didn't protect you. Silence didn't protect you. Nothing protected you. From then on, Selene spoke only when necessary, choosing each word with the precision of someone who knew that a single sentence could end her life.
Lady Morella's marriage to Lord Thorian had always been cold, but she accepted it as her duty.
What she did not expect was that Thorian's mistress, Lyra, would hold more power over her life than her husband himself. Lyra wasn't just a lover, she was cunning, ambitious, and desperate to maintain her position. She feared that Morella might one day regain Thorian's affection, so she devised a plan to make sure the wife stayed powerless.
Lyra paid servants to spy on Morella, reporting every detail. What she ate?
Who she spoke to. When she smiled. Even how long she prayed. Every report was twisted into something threatening. If Morella complimented a knight's bravery, Lyra told Thorian she was flirting. If she visited the stables, Lyra claimed she was planning an escape. If she cried at night, a sound servants heard often Lyra said she cried because she was guilty. Thorian, blinded by infatuation, believed every word. Soon, Morella was forbidden to speak to male servants, then female servants, then even her own cousin. She lived under constant surveillance. She wasn't imprisoned by walls, she was imprisoned by lies.
Lyra eventually pushed further, suggesting Morella was poisoning Thorian out of jealousy.
Though no evidence existed,
Thorian demanded Morella confess.
When she refused, he ordered her confined to the East Tower. From her small window, Morella watched Lyra walk freely through the gardens, smiling, laughing, triumphant. The betrayal cut deeper than any blade. It wasn't her husband who destroyed her life, it was the woman he preferred. In the kingdom of Evershore, power didn't belong merely to nobles, it also belonged to the maids who served them. Servants saw everything, heard everything, and when threatened, bribed, or manipulated, they became deadly weapons. Lady Adrienne discovered this too late. Her husband's political rival, Lord Dorian, could not confront her openly, so he targeted her through her servants. He approached her, new maid, Syrah girl, who had no family and no protection. He offered her a handful of silver in exchange for a few observations. At first, Sarah simply reported harmless details. Adrienne's sleep schedule, the letters she received, the guests she hosted. But Dorian wanted more. So Sarah began inventing things. She claimed Adrienne met a secret lover. She claimed Adrienne plotted to move funds. She claimed Adrienne undermined her husband. Sarah didn't want to lie. But Dorian threatened to accuse her of theft, a crime punishable by mutilation. Terrified, she complied. Adrienne's husband confronted her with fury, waving a report filled with Syrah's fabricated accusations.
Adrienne denied everything. But in medieval courts,
a servant's word was often taken as objective truth, because servants had nothing to gain. Adrienne was placed under investigation, her letters confiscated, her movements restricted. Her reputation collapsed in a single week. Sarah finally confessed, but instead of being forgiven, she was executed silenced forever to protect Dorian's scheme. Adrienne never recovered her status. And across the kingdom, noble women began to look at their servants, not with trust but with fear. Because anyone who served your meals could also destroy your life. Queen Althea's reign was remembered as the era of silence, for during her rule, no woman dared whisper a secret, share a fear, or speak her heart aloud. And it wasn't because the queen was cruel, it was because she knew cruelty better than anyone. Before she became queen, she was betrayed by her closest friend, Lady who sold her private thoughts to a rival noble in exchange for marriage into a wealthy family. Soriel revealed Althea's insecurities, her hopes, her vulnerabilities, turning them into weapons that nearly cost Althea her life. When Althea ascended the throne, she vowed no woman would ever be destroyed by betrayal again, not even herself. But her methods were brutal. She created a secret guard known as the Silver Talons, whose job was to capture anyone spreading rumors or manipulating women through lies. But the Talons' sense of justice warped quickly. A maid who shared a joke about the queen's dress was punished. A lady who sighed during a meeting was accused of disrespect. A noblewoman who hesitated before answering was treated as suspicious. Punishments ranged from long imprisonment to public humiliating, sometimes torture. Fear spread across the court. Women stopped forming friendships. Smiles disappeared. Conversations became rigid, rehearsed, mechanical. The queen believed she was creating safety. In truth, she was creating terror. Althea spent her nights wandering her lavish chamber, unable to sleep, haunted by the memory of
and by the silence she had forced upon every woman.
For in trying to end betrayal, she became the one women feared most. In the imperial court of Dalmar, truth was irrelevant. Every verdict, every judgment, every punishment was based on spy reports, not evidence. And these spies, known as the listeners, lurked everywhere. Lady Hallen was a scholar, respected for her knowledge of languages and history. But her intelligence made her a threat in a court run by insecure men. The listeners monitored her constantly, waiting for any word they could twist.
One day,
Hallen mentioned during a private conversation that the Empire needed stronger communication with neighboring lands. It was an academic thought, nothing more. But a listener hiding behind a tapestry reported it as, Lady Hallen seeks foreign alliances. Within hours, her comment was exaggerated into treason. She was summoned before the High Tribunal, but the court didn't ask for her side. Instead, they read a list of accusations built entirely from spy reports she had no way to challenge. Her friends were warned not to defend her. Her family was told to stay silent. Her voice meant nothing.
The tribunal sentenced her to permanent relocation to an isolated monastery.
Not execution, exile was more convenient. Women who disappeared quietly caused less scandal.
As Hallen left the palace gates, she watched the listeners gather, whispering among themselves.
She wondered how many lives they had destroyed. How many women had been condemned for innocent thoughts. How many futures vanished because of one misinterpreted sentence. And she knew the truth that every woman in Dalmar feared. The listeners didn't record truth. They created it.